Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation brought to you by Bet365. We're coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studios. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. My name is Dave Quadrelli. I am joined by Harmon Dial. Not a great game for the Vancouver Canucks. Do we even call them the Vancouver Canucks? You can't even call them the Abbotsford Canucks because there's, some Vancouver players there. But it was so funny. Last night I found myself calling it the Abbey line. I was like, wait, now there's 2 or 3 Abby lines on this team right now. A depleted Canucks roster falls to the Pittsburgh Penguins by a final score of 5-1.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of game where you obviously need your top guys to carry the mail, and they weren't really able to do that. I didn't really have a problem with Elias Patterson's game, but you wanted more from Quinn Hughes, guys like Jake DeBrusk, Philip Hronek. You obviously didn't have Thatcher Demko in net to steal you a game the way he might have been able to do in the past. And hey, they started pretty decently in the first period. It's just the second period where they got completely demolished. The shots were, I got them here, 1 sec, 14-3 in that middle frame. They gave up high danger chances in bunches. Left the goaltender Kevin Lankinen out to dry. They were dominated on faceoffs and were chasing because of that. They reverted back to some of their habits as far as turnovers. So yeah, it was a daunting kind of task. But, and this is a broader point that I want to make about these 7 games as a whole, it's really hard to get a read and properly assess what this Canucks team is because of how many strange variables there are that obfuscate and muddy the team's process and results, right? So I haven't necessarily loved their process through 7 games, but these 7 games probably aren't a fair representation considering the number of forward injuries. First and foremost, the fact that this was nearly half an AHL forward lineup, the heavy road trip with this being the 4th game in 6 nights, tons of travel involved, and a little bit of what I alluded to earlier, that Quinn Hughes has underperformed so far. And I also don't think, from the flip side, you can put too much stock into, well, 4-3-0 is a pretty good record considering all the challenges the team has faced, because they've been boosted by having the 2nd highest shooting percentage in the NHL, which is a finishing efficiency that isn't going to last the entire year. And they've had stellar goaltending, which we expect them to have high-end goaltending, but maybe not to the extent that they've had that Demko specifically. They may not have that for the entire season. So just my overall takeaway, not even with this Penguins one, but the start to the year as a whole is it's so hard to properly and fairly assess their process and the results because there are just so many weird variables at play in the early going.
A big conversation from last night's game is ice time. Harm at 5-on-5, Jake DeBrusk is the low man. Elias Pettersson's right behind him. Karn in the chat said, "I'm so pissed about the first line ice time stuff. Play your best players." At first, it's weird. Like, it's weird that Joe Labate has more ice time than those guys, right? Like, when I say DeBrusk, Pettersson, low man, that might stand out, but it should stand out a lot more when I tell you that that was a game that Nils Amon played in, that was a game that Joe Labate played in. It's weird. I agree, but also worth mentioning that this was a blowout. Like, this was a game that was away from them, and in the 3rd period, that's when we really saw Elias Pettersson's ice time take a dip.
I don't think it changed much, though. I was looking period by period.
No, that's what I'm looking at right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. He had 4 shifts in the 3rd.
But look at the totals. They were pretty similar to the first 2 periods.
2 of them were power plays. No?
I'm looking at his overall ice time. I was looking at his total shifts.
Okay.
But the point being, it wasn't he played a ton through the first 2 periods, and then once the game was out of hand, Adam Foote said, all right, we're not going to use you much in the 3rd period.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Absolutely. So what do you make of this then?
Yeah, you don't want to see him under 17 minutes of total ice time, right? I understand that the 5-on-5 ice time especially looks really low, and people would rightly point out that, hey, he plays a lot on special teams, but even account for his special teams minutes, he played less than Aatu Räty in that game. And I understand he was struggling in the faceoff dot, but the whole team outside of Atu Ratu was getting dominated in the faceoff dot. Jake DeBrusk, in terms of total ice time, was also under 14 minutes. I want to see Elias Pettersson play more. Now, there is some nuance and context to add to this conversation. First is perhaps workload related. So Patterson played 20-33 during the first game of this road trip against Dallas and 21-34 against Chicago. So he's logged a lot of minutes at the start of this road trip. And again, the Pittsburgh game was your fourth contest in 6 nights with tons of travel involved. And this is a kicker. You know you have a massive back-to-back on the weekend against the Canadiens and the Oilers, two of the most exciting teams in the league. Obviously, Oilers are off to a slow start, but we know how loaded they are on paper. That weekend is going to be a really challenging test. And when you consider on the start of this road trip how many miles Patterson had already logged, I wonder if that was part of it. A second point I would bring up is, and this is perhaps related to managing workload, I actually had last Friday an exec from another NHL team text me unprompted and point out that Patterson seems to get tired pretty quickly during his shifts. There's an unprompted observation from the outside, obviously, but this person brought this up as it's a bit surprising to me how quickly Patterson seems to get tired during his shifts. He seems to get tired more quickly than his line mates and come off the ice. And if that's true, if the coaching staff views it the same way, I wonder if they're extra particular about making sure that Patterson's closer to 17 to 18 minute range on a night-to-night basis rather than consistently pushing him to 20, 21 minutes. But we also don't know. This is a tough part about a lack of road media is I don't know whether they're being particularly strategic about Patterson's ice time and trying to optimize his performance during the shifts when he is out there. Or it could just as easily be a case of, well, Adam Foote is almost Willie Desjardins style, rolling out 3 or 4 lines pretty evenly. And this isn't necessarily even a workload related thing. It's just Adam Foote maybe needs to do less of the rolling all 4 lines and be more thoughtful and mindful about getting his top players out there more often.
And that's why I don't want to sit here too long and speculate and wonder what it is, because we have the power to go ask the head coach what's going on, and that's what's going to happen as soon as they get back home. That's going to be one of the first questions asked, especially if it continues, right? Like, it'll be a topic of conversation. But yeah, you're right, no road media, so don't really get to find out about that. But what a tough media environment Vancouver is, right? On the game, I also want to talk about Quinn Hughes as well. That was another topic from last night. You kind of talked about it. Just hasn't really taken over a game just yet. And don't get me wrong, he's been their best defenseman by a significant margin, but hasn't been like a top 5 player in the league, which is what he was last year, right? Where he can just take over a game and win it for you single-handedly. Hasn't really had to do that, or not had to do that. They could have used that for sure on a night like last night even, but hasn't done that yet this year. What's going on with Quinn Hughes in your mind?
To me, what makes Quinn a one-of-a-kind player in this league when he's on is that he is the rare low risk, high reward player where he is attempting outrageous moves all over the ice on breakouts, zone entries, in zone when he's attacking, the dipsy doodles, the cutbacks, the way that he's driving into the slot, especially as the last man back. And he's able to try all of these moves that 95% of defensemen wouldn't even have the skill set or the balls to give it a go. And not only is he able to get it right more often than not, he rarely gets it wrong. It rarely ends up in a turnover. It's not like Erik Karlsson, for example, where you get the flashy, eye-popping offensive sequences, but you also get the trade-offs where you get the boneheaded turnovers and out of position. I think what's changed through the first 7 games is that he is turning pucks over. I think the second period was a good example of that. There was a shift where he turned it over on an entry and it was an odd man rush against. I can probably count on 2 hands the number of times that happened all of last year where Quinn Hughes is going in for a zone entry, turns it over, and it's a clear-cut odd man rush against. And then the next shift, even from a defensive standpoint, I think he's looked a little bit off where There's a D-zone draw. Brian Rust deked Quinn and made a move to the inside, was able to drive to the net for a clear-cut scoring chance. Quinn just doesn't get beat that often defensively, despite being a smaller defenseman, and you can see it in the numbers, right? His on-ice shots against rate so far is the highest it's been since his sophomore year in the league, and through 7 games has been on the ice for 7 even strength goals against. Last year, he was only on the ice for 2 5-on-5 goals against in his first 12 games.
That's crazy.
So I think you're seeing a player that is just than he usually is. And
sorry, repeat that part. Your mic cut out.
Yeah, he's just making more mistakes than he usually is. And that's part of the reason why I'm not going to freak out about a loss like last night, because I expect Quinn to be a whole lot better. And when he's out on the ice for 25 minutes a night, and you get the game breaker version of him as well, that is not only driving offense, but also isn't giving anything up defensively, this team's process could look a whole lot different.
Yeah. And this is the conversation we've been having since the start. Whenever we talk about Quinn struggling, it's like, okay, well, obviously he's going to figure it out. I don't know. I know it's not that far into the season yet. We're still so early into the season, but I'm like just waiting for it. I would love to see it when Quinn can just take over a game. That'd be fantastic. I would love to see Quinn do that at some point here. Archer Shilov's in net for the Penguins. Gave up the first goal to Connor Garland, but settled in pretty nicely. After that, good story for the Artie party, getting the win in that game. I want to talk about the Vancouver goal crease because I brought up Kevin Lankinen yesterday. And I don't think yesterday's game, because of all the other stuff that was going on with how shorthanded this team was, with, all the injuries they're facing, Bruckbester away and all that sort of stuff, like, they weren't expecting Kevin Lankinen to do much more than what he gave them. But what I was saying yesterday was like, okay, it's going to be something I keep an eye on, is like, can Kevin Lankinen steal a game for them at some point here? Because he was doing it last year. He did it just fine. Thatcher Demko is able to steal games. Can Lankinen get close to that level or at that level? Not at the exact same level of Demko, but just like, can you steal a game where the Canucks don't really have a ton of business being in? Can you steal that? Lankinen wasn't there to do that last night. So just something to keep an eye on. There's another back-to-back coming up. He'll get another chance. But so far, it's been I'd say it's been a pretty wide margin between Demko and Lankinen with who the better goalie's been this year.
Well, it should be a pretty wide margin. When both players are healthy. Yeah, it should.
No.
When Thatcher Demko is healthy.
No, Harm. You're getting the best version. No, dude, you're getting the best version of Demko right now, and you're getting like the late in the season worst version of Lankinen right now.
I mean, Lankinen was pretty good. Lankinen was pretty good against Chicago. He had before last night. He had a 9-11 save percentage. I didn't like 1 or 2 of the goals that he gave up last night. But if you're going to be surrendering odd man rushes in high danger looks at an alarming rate,
like they were in October of last year when Lankinen was in
it wasn't like that. It wasn't, not to this degree, man.
It was so bad. Yes, it was. Okay, I'm gonna get Woodley on the show.
But then what happened the rest of the season? He came back down to earth, because Kevin Lankinen, I like him a lot, but he's a good 1B. Expecting a good 1B to carry a team when they're messy defensively is just a recipe for being left disappointed. Of course, there's a big margin between Demko and Lankinen. Demko, when he's healthy, talent-wise, is a top 5 to 10 goaltender easily in the NHL. That's never been Kevin Lankinen.
But Lankinen last year, again, what I'm trying to say is, like, if you had the best version of Thatcher Demko, which we have right now, and then you had the best version of Kevin Lankinen, those aren't as far as you're making it sound. But right now,
that was what Lankinen for 6 weeks.
Lankinen was
a lot of Lankinen was good last year, but he had a 902 save percentage last year. He was good, but he wasn't stellar.
Yeah, well, he fell off after the All-Star Olympic Four Nations break.
Yeah,
that's when I'm talking like, okay, October he was like actually Vezina level. Sure,
for sure. Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about from October to January, the results he was turning in. Like, can you get that? And I think that's when they extended him, Harm. Like, that's the goalie they thought they were getting, and that's not what that's not how he's playing right now. I know it's early, and you're making me sound more alarmist because I'm having to defend my point. But my point is just, let's keep an eye on this, because right now the temptation is going to creep up when you have a goalie who is playing so much better than your other goalie, which is what's happening right now, to run that other guy. And we know that running Thatcher Demko is not a good move. But you can say that till you're blue in the face. You can talk all season, all off season long about how, oh, it's so important to limit Lankinen. It's so important, or excuse me, so important to limit Demko, and to some extent limit Lankinen, but so important to limit Demko's starts. But then when the chips are down and you got to get wins, who are you going to turn to? It's going to be Thatcher Demko, and they've got to resist that temptation.
I think where we differ is I put more of the responsibility on they got to defend better in front of him.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think Lankinen is probably somewhere between the 15th to 25th best goaltender in the league, which is to say he's above average. But if you're expecting a goaltender in that range, talent-wise, to carry a team when he's been completely left out to dry in 2 of his 3 starts, Lankinen is not that guy. Yep. There are only 5, maybe 5, 6 goaltenders who could excel in that kind of defensive environment. Thatcher Demko is one of them.
Demko's one of them, yeah.
So to me, this is a defensive environment needs to improve in front of Lankinen, rather than Lankinen needs to step up his individual play. I'm not saying he's been perfect, but I expect that he's going to struggle if this is how the team defends in front of him.
Sorry, so I should reiterate what I was saying yesterday, and what I was trying to bring up again today is just that it's something to keep an eye on as long as the gap stays as wide as it is right now. It's something to keep an eye on. And as the losses, as losses happen, they're going to start to look more to Demko. So maybe, and again, Adam Foote's talked about making the plan in advance. That's something I'd like to ask him about when they get back to Vancouver. When does that plan change, right? Where it's like, okay, we had it in pencil as a Lankinen start here, but we could probably give this one to Thatcher. I'm not talking back-to-backs, but he's not just playing back-to-backs. That's not going to give you the split that you're looking for between Demko and Lankinen. So that's all I'm saying is just watch it. Watch what's going on and keep an eye on it. It's, again, like I said, it's not a alarmist, like Kevin Lankinen sucks, Kevin Lankinen needs to be better. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say, keep an eye on it as long as things continue the way they are.
And I understand the point you're trying to make about if there does end up being a lack of trust in Lankinen this year, then the coaching staff is going to have that temptation to ride Demko into the ground. I understand that point. I just wanted to clarify, maybe not even to you, but more to maybe people who are listening, that I want to be clear about, I think this is more of a defensive environment issue than it is a Kevin Lankinen issue. And especially a game like last night, they only scored 1 goal offensively. So even if you did have Thatcher Demko, you're probably losing that game in regulation regardless.
Fair enough. In front of Kevin Lankinen, P.O. Joseph, people didn't have a lot of time for P.O. Joseph. Got lost in coverage a couple times. Are we expecting Tom Willander to make his NHL debut on Thursday?
Possibly. You saw Joseph's ice time as well was well below DPD. So clearly Adam Foote isn't in love with him. We saw Joseph not have the best preseason, perhaps, but also I guess you have to have a couple of considerations in mind. You don't have last change against Nashville, but Nashville also is a weaker offensive team. So perhaps that's an opportunity to get him in there as opposed to against a team like the Canadiens or the others who are a lot more dynamic offensively. It's a possibility for sure.
One thing we haven't talked about with this game yet, Harm, as we kind of wrap up our conversation about last night's game, was the Canucks started really well. We mentioned the goal from Connor Garland, but like they were stacking shifts. Evander Kane had a breakaway opportunity, came up short, and then Drew O'Connor took a penalty, and that killed all the momentum. Or was it O'Connor or Kane that took the penalty?
I think it was O'Connor.
Okay. I didn't like O'Connor or Kane last night. I'll say that as well. I wrote that in instant reaction that I was just, like, for all the talk about your stars, like, not so much O'Connor, I guess, but like Kane, you're just waiting for him to make an impact, right? Score that goal. You had the breakaway opportunity. It comes down to moments sometimes. And right now they're not getting a ton from Evander Kane, unfortunately. So I wanted to at least mention that. But yeah, the Canucks did actually start this game pretty well. So absolutely worth mentioning. Anything else you want to say about last night?
No, let's transition to the stat
Oh,
of the day,
hell yeah. Oh
which
my
is
gosh.
a
Look at this guy
presentation
setting
of Uber
himself up.
Eats.
Oh my gosh.
Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates and napkins if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip. Before, during, and after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Hashtag crave the stats. So I was mentioning earlier how the environment in front of Lankinen and Thatcher Demko for that matter hasn't been very good defensively. Well, through 7 games, and this is a trend that I'm going to be keeping my eye on throughout the season. According to Natural Stat Trick, they're 28th in the NHL for expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. Last year, they were a top 10 team in that category. We know that they've opened things up under Adam Foote, and we've seen the upside of that, where against both Dallas and Washington in those wins, they're creating a lot more off the rush. However, through 7 games, they're also giving up a lot more off the rush. And this goes back to some of the conversations we were having last year surrounding Tocchet's system, where the point I made a lot of the time was, all right, if you open it up, you might create a lot more offensively and off the rush, but I would suspect, also going to give up a lot more in transition defense. And so on the net, on the balance and the whole, are your results really going to improve? I'd also add, especially now that you don't have Filipino's speed and zone entries in the top 6, do you have the offensive weapons to consistently excel off the rush? Do you have the high-end skill to outgun teams if there end up being track meet style games? That's going to be something that I monitor. But again, it also goes back to what we opened the show discussing, which is that's an early trend I don't like seeing. But even process-wise, it's not necessarily representative of, well, just because they've had a subpar start defensively, that they're going to be a subpar team all year, or that there's something wrong with Adam Foote's system. Because, again, so many variables that have made this a challenging environment when you think of the forward injuries, the heavy road trip and travel, and presumably fatigue catching up to them in the final 40 minutes of that Pittsburgh game, and the Quinn Hughes factor as well.
Well said. Where'd it go? Yeah, Karn in the chat said, "What a transition, Harm." And we are in a world where Harm is excited for an ad read. I love your stat of the day. Like you're crushing it. You're doing a really good job. Did you want to expand it all and like have a broader conversation about that stat and like the defensive play as a whole?
Yeah. Well, early on, it was related to sloppy puck management.
Yep.
And again, this is why it's tough to, like, we need a bigger sample before we really draw conclusions. In the beginning, you could argue, well, they were just shaking off early season rust. They're
Learning a
new
system.
system. Of course, they're going to look out of sync, disconnected at times. And after the St. Louis and Edmonton losses, the process started looking better, especially after the from the second period of the Dallas game onward. I think puck management started creeping back up as a bit of an issue in the Pittsburgh game. But you've also seen not just the puck management aspect, players diving in, defensemen especially pinching aggressively, and then the F3 not always covering properly. We've just I remember the 23-24 Canucks who were so good at defending the rush, barely gave up any odd man rushes. They were so disciplined, first and foremost, on the back check. The level of back pressure that group had to funnel puck carriers to one side of the ice and give the defenseman leeway to step up in the neutral zone and play a tight gap. As a puck carrier playing against the Canucks, you just had no time and space. There was pressure all over the ice. However, that defensive pressure was in part because the team's identity was entirely different. The team's identity was, we're going to play a conservative style where we don't want to make plays off the rush. We don't want to turn pucks over. So it's going to be red line, dump and chase. Even in the offensive zone, it was very basic, low to high, point shot,
It's why the offense looks so boring and lackluster at times. But it's also why they gave up so little defensively is because they controlled. They almost played keep away in the offensive zone. They didn't want to try anything east-west. They didn't want to try anything creative. And yeah, it led to situations where it was painful watching them in the attacking zone, but it also meant that you had sustained heavy shifts in the attacking zone, which is, I think, something this team through 7 games hasn't had a lot of. Even when they have been in the offensive zone, whether it's because of turnovers or just missing the net and pucks rimming around the glass and out of the zone, they haven't been able to really spend a lot of time hemming opponents in the offensive zone. So there are a lot of moving parts. I don't think it's one area or one reason they've been given up a lot defensively through the first 7 games, but it is something that they're going to have to clean up.
Love it. Let's get to anyone else. Presentation of Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. A no-compromise approach to electric vehicles that offers the best of both worlds. Drive up to 72 kilometers on the battery alone, then seamlessly transition from electric mode to the gas engine for a combined range of 962 kilometers. There's no sacrifices when it comes to horsepower or style with its sleek, low, and wide exterior and sophisticated interior. It's loaded with tech that's actually easy to use. Plug in to recharge at home or at one of the over 2,000 public charging stations in BC alone. And now you can lease a 2025 Prius plug-in hybrid SE from $99 weekly at 3.49% APR for 64 months with $3,600 down. And it includes a $3,000 discount. Visit shoptoyota.ca at your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Sarah Nurse is going to join the show later in the show. We pre-recorded it. So that's going to play at the end of the show. Really, really fun interview with Sarah Nurse, of course, of PWHL Vancouver. We need some more Family Feud responses. All right. We need to get some Family Feud responses in. Yeah, we are going to play tomorrow. So
we need 27. I just checked. So if you're watching live on YouTube, we might get there. If you're listening to the audio podcast, if you're listening early, there's still probably some opportunities. So please fill out our survey.
Fill out the survey. Rajcraft said, how often are there reporters on the road? That's a great question. We're going to send JPAT, and we try to send JPAT. Like, we send him for the playoffs. But regular season, we try to do like 2 trips a year. You guys do more at the Athletic. What's your, I mean, you don't have to give us the whole schedule, but like, what are you thinking for reporters reporting on the road this year?
Yeah, usually one of Mir Drance are on most of the longer road trips. This one obviously didn't work out because Drance had a personal matter to tend to. But normally one of us would be out there, and that would have been the plan. But that's the different part about post-COVID travel is even when I, for example, go on a road trip, there aren't many other reporters on the road besides Ian McIntyre is usually there. Of course, the Sportsnet crew, Dan Murphy and those guys. But outside of them and the team staff, like post media doesn't really travel.
Yeah, it's
doesn't travel.
It's thin, like it's very thin on the road.
It picks up if they make the playoffs. I remember the 2024 playoff run was whoa. This is something I haven't seen since the pre-pandemic days of so many outlets out on the road. But during the regular season, no, and that's part of when Rick Tocchet was discussing on Chicklets about how tough the media environment is or whatever. Adam Foote wasn't even asked about the deployment of the top players just because there weren't non-rights holder media on the road to ask him that.
Or team staff. Like, yeah. That's why anyway, I'm not going to keep on the topic of Rick Tocchet's Spit and Chicklets interview. Oh yeah, S Little Boston said, did you see the Bruins and Boston fans honor Marchand last night? I did. I was flipping because it happened during the first intermission of the Canucks game last night, and I did not watch the intermission last night. So I was watching Bruins Panthers. And yeah, I loved it. I loved seeing that tribute. And I even tweeted it out. I find myself liking Brad Marchand more and more these days, and I hate it. I don't know how to feel about it, but I like him more and more.
Well, yeah, as a Canucks fan growing up, especially after the 2011 run, Brad Marchand was public enemy number 1. But each year, especially once he became a member of the Canadian team. And I think back to the World Cup of Hockey in 2016, I want to say, when he
Yeah.
was on that line with Crosby, it was the first time I was like, okay, I don't like him, but he's kind of cool, and I can see why when he's
And
on
I
your
would like
team,
him if he were on my team.
yeah. And then each year since then, especially now that he went to the Panthers, had that epic playoff run, just how much you appreciate his personality, all the back and forths he has with Biz on the TNT broadcast. You're like, this guy seems like a gem of a human being, and yeah, he's a rat on the ice, but you would love to have him on your team.
Yeah, like that's the thing. You don't hear a bad thing about him from his teammates, right? You don't. Like there won't be an experienced teammate that has anything bad to say about him. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Do you
I found
remember
myself
the
liking him more.
Do you remember the era when there was a decent chunk of Canucks Twitter profile photos, which were the crying Marchand after their
Oh, yeah.
2013 loss? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still vividly remember that, and it's still it just feels like we're in a completely different world where, I mean, I don't know if all Canucks fans are over Marchand, but I think at least some of them don't have nearly the same amount of hatred as they used to.
Yeah, I agreed. Karn said, given that the Hughes-Hronek pair hasn't been as dynamic as usual, would it be worth splitting them up for a game? I say no. I think that's counterintuitive. I think those guys got to figure it out together. I think the best way for Quinn Hughes to be a star is to put him in the best environment to succeed, and I think that's playing with Philip Hronek.
Yeah, I think it's a little too early to be tweaking that. And the fact of the matter is the D pairs, even if they do start Hughes and Hronek, end up switching a lot in game because of how Foot and the rest of the coaching staff wants them to be pretty adaptable. I mean, how many times have you seen Hughes out there with, I mean, last night he had a couple of shifts even with P.O. Joseph. Earlier, you might see him on the ice with the Victor Mancini. The D pairs have rotated constantly, especially after special team situations. When, let's say, Hughes is on PP1 and is kind of gassed, but Hronek isn't, or vice versa on the PK, where Hronek's out there on the penalty kill, Hughes isn't. So then Hughes is first over the boards once the penalty expires, and he's out there with somebody else. The D pairs kind of rotate a lot anyway. And so to me, I want to see Hughes and Hronek get more of an extended leash together before I decide, all right, switch things up. And if they do switch things up, I think what I'd like to see is perhaps Hughes and Myers, because they were surprisingly good together over the last couple of years whenever Tocchet went away from Hughes and Hronek.
Paul Papadoulis, which Canucks Convo host and or technical producer had a faux hawk hairstyle in 2011? I did not. Jacob says he did, though. Jacob, can we get a photo of that?
I'll have to dig through. We'll see. I'll try and get something up before the end of the segment. But yes, I vividly remember, and obviously everyone knows I'm a Habs fan as well, but I remember that playoff run. Montreal went to 7 games with Boston in round 1. They lost. And then I was all in on Vancouver. I remember going to school in my Luongo jersey every game day with my faux hawk because we were not allowed wearing hats in our middle school. So my hair was growing out. It got very long by the middle of June.
I love it. Last one. Let's get to this, and then let's go to Sarah Nurse. Ricky DeSantis. Has Garland now overtaken Besser on PD's wing for good? What does that mean for the second line? I think he has taken over on PD's wing. So what does it mean for the second line in your mind? I mean, it's so hard to project lines right now. There's no center on that line. So, does it mean Brock Besser's playing with Atu Ratu? Right now, it does.
Yeah, or maybe Teddy Bluger if he's back. But even when Bluger comes back, and I think this is a broader point, is yes, they've dealt with a lot of injuries. However, if Hedl is out long term, you get Besser back, you get Bluger back, Lecker-Mackey, Höglander. This is still on paper going to be a bottom 10 forward group in the NHL. And you're hoping, we know the goaltending is a strength. We know that their blue line on paper is pretty good. But even when this forward group is healthy and you get some of your players back, without Hedl, this team is, I think, going to struggle to meaningfully manufacture offense from the forward group. And that lingers with me as a big picture concern for really the whole season until either Hedo somehow, if he is able to, comes back, or if they're miraculously able to land a top 6 center, which I still think is a bit of a pipe dream.
Dylan McDonald says it means Horvat and Besser will reunite on the second line in a week or two. Love it. And Adam King, he was here after he got married, wanted to thank the chat for all the recommendations because he had his game day experience for the season opener and he was asking where to go. And we said, rent yourself a Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid, get yourself to Greta, and order on Uber Eats as well. Adam, glad you had a good time. All right, ready for Sarah Nurse?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Our interview, which we've pre-recorded and we'll get to in a second, is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away. You can skip the line and not have to pay cover on game nights if you're wearing the home team's gear. And of course, there's also the game day specials at Greta, including $3.33 off select food items, $3.33 on select drinks, and more. With the arcade, bar, and street food menu, make Greta your spot to watch the big game. Let's get to our interview with Sarah Nurse. All right, very, very pleased to be joined now by PWHL Vancouver forward Sarah Nurse. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time. How you doing today?
Hi, thank you. Good. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Super excited to have you on the show. How excited are you for PWHL Vancouver joining this team?
Yeah, very excited. I feel like we've been talking about it for a really long time, so I want to be done talking about it and actually just get to Vancouver and start training, start playing together.
Yeah, so you've done some stuff with EA Sports before in Burnaby, but aside from that, like, what's your experience with Vancouver?
I have very little experience in Vancouver. I've only probably spent like less than 48 hours there at a time. And so I was there this summer and it was beautiful. We got to go on like the water taxi. We were in Granville Island. We went up to a couple of the different mountains and did some fun like activations up there. But I don't really have a ton of experience. So I'm excited to get to Vancouver and obviously see the community and see what the whole city has to offer.
There are obviously so many elite players in women's hockey, but I think to most people in Canada, you've really emerged as the face of women's hockey. What's it like being the face of a sport, especially the last few years where it feels like the popularity has skyrocketed?
I think that it's so great. Like you mentioned, like the popularity of women's hockey has like gone through the roof. And so to be able to turn on a Sportsnet or a TSN or a CBC and see like our highlights or, promoting the next game, the next matchup that we have has been like monumental because growing up, I never saw women's sports, let alone women's hockey at all. And so I think the popularity has just shown that like, given the platform, like we can do some pretty special things with it. And, we're a startup. We've only been like, we're going into year 3. And so I know that as we move forward throughout the next few years, it's going to be absolutely amazing. We're going to continue to like push the bar and raise it.
I love that the PWHL has some cool rules that the NHL doesn't have. There's the 3-2-1 point system in the standings, the jailbreak rule where minor penalty ends when if the shorthanded team scores. The top seed having the option to choose your opponent for the playoffs. There are others there too. But out of the ones I mentioned, which one of those PWHL specific rules do you love the most?
Oh, I mean, like, I really like them all individually. Like, I think they're all really great rules. I obviously love the jailbreak. I think that like nothing fires up a team more than a jailbreak goal.
Yeah.
But I really do think the 3-point system like is game changing. I mean, like last year, I think it was New York that lost like 9 or 10 or 11 games in a row, and they weren't eliminated from playoff contention until the end of the year. So like I feel like that just goes to show how much 3 points really, really means. And I think that it's such an interesting point system and that I think it would be really cool to be integrated at different levels of professional hockey.
I agree with you about the jailbreak rule. That jailbreak rule, that's so cool. That's like
Yeah.
the coolest thing. Okay, so the Olympics coming up this winter. At 2022, we all know gold medal, most points in a single tournament for yourself individually. Can you just describe how special it was to perform like that on the Olympic stage and just how excited you are for another Olympic opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, the Olympics is something that you dream of as a young kid. And so to be able to be there, it was such a different Olympics with COVID and everything that was going on. And so not having family and friends made it completely different and completely interesting. So it really was like our team just banded together, completely in it together. But I mean, that tournament, like, it was like we had lightning in a bottle. Our team was firing on like every cylinder possible, and it felt like everything our stick touch went in the net. And like, that's a really good feeling to be in that flow state of just like complete. I don't want to say it was easy, but like it just felt like we were at ease. And so I just think like that Olympics was so special for so many different reasons. And I mean, so many of my teammates had incredible performances, but to have the prospect of getting back there in Milan, it's something that's so exciting. And I can't wait, to have the opportunity to continue to try out for the national team and hopefully get a spot on the Milan roster.
A lot of expansion teams just across professional sports usually aren't very good off the hop, but I'm looking at your guys' roster and top to bottom, it's a pretty stacked team, and it feels like on paper, if you guys are able to gel, you guys could be really good from day one. I'm curious what your take is on the team you guys kind of have with PWHL Vancouver and what your expectations are for what you guys can maybe achieve this year.
The expansion was definitely aggressive. I mean, protecting like 3 players per franchise, like that's pretty crazy. It's pretty unheard of. But the league made it very clear that they want competitive expansion teams. And I mean, this was their way of achieving it. And so being able to be a part of an expansion process, and then seeing the expansion draft actually happen and free agency happen, and then see how our team looks and how we start to shape up, like you start to think and you start to put pieces together, possible like pairings and line combinations. And it just, everything starts to look good. But I mean, like you mentioned it, like we have to gel, we have to click, we have to have chemistry. And I think that's the most important thing. And so you're bringing together essentially, 20 new people who really haven't played together at all. And so that's, I think, going to be the biggest challenge, is making sure that we can come in, be on the same page, and be going towards that same common goal together, which I don't think we'll have a problem with. I'm fairly confident, having spoken to, most of my teammates, my coaching staff. I'm really excited at the group that we have. There's so much depth. There's so much attack from different areas. And then, I mean, in net, we're pretty unstoppable. We have some of the best goalies in the world. So super excited.
That gelling process, do you kind of take that upon yourself as one of the veterans on the team? Do you kind of look at it that way?
I think it's just a mixture of making sure everybody like feels comfortable. And I mean, we're all heading into a very new situation. There's nobody who's been there before. And so going in, like, I feel like we're all like first day of school again, trying to meet new people who we've played against. I mean, I've only played with a couple of the girls on the team. I know many of them, but I've only played with a few. And so it's really getting to know people off of the ice. What are they like away from the rink? And I think that's what makes that's what builds like the character in the locker room, and that's what builds the culture. I really think that getting to know each other away from the rink, having coffee, going out to dinners, going for a walk, getting to know each other's dogs, little things like that are really what make you have that like trust and respect for each other.
For you personally, when did you first fall in love with hockey? Like you mentioned, didn't get to watch a lot of women's hockey growing up. What kept you motivated through the years where you didn't really have anywhere to play? Like, where's your love for hockey come from?
I honestly, I don't know. I've always just liked playing hockey. I learned how to skate, and so I love to skate. That was like the most fun thing that I could do. But I just always liked playing hockey, and I've been good at it. And so every year it was like, hey, do you want to play basketball this year? Do you want to play volleyball? And it's like, oh no, I like playing hockey. Like, let me continue to play hockey. And so for a very long time, it didn't necessarily like occur to me. Like, I remember watching the Olympics play in 2002 when they won the gold medal. And that was the first time I ever saw women's hockey. So I was obviously very excited, but I obviously wanted to play on that team, but there weren't other stepping stones to really get to. So I just played hockey for fun for many, many, many years. And then I realized that I could possibly get the opportunity to have a scholarship. And so that was like my next goal. And then through that came kind of Team Canada things. And it all kind of, I guess, melted together the way that it was supposed to. But honestly, like, my joy just came from playing hockey, and I didn't really have any expectations on a career.
From the outside, it really seems like we touched on it a little bit earlier, but the last 2-3 years, especially since the league has kind of formed, it's done wonders for really growing the game, the popularity. I mean, even anecdotally, so many of my friends that only grew up watching NHL hockey have become hooked on like first it started with highlights, then watching games. And now that there's a team coming to Vancouver, they're so excited about buying tickets and going to games. It feels like there's been a huge level of buy-in that there maybe like it's a huge difference compared to, let's say, pre-COVID. For you firsthand, what's your experience been like? Does it feel the same way that it does on the outside, where it's hitting a new scale and a new level each year?
I think it's funny because I feel like obviously through like social media, things can take on a life of its own. And so getting out there on social media, like obviously our clips are shown and different things that are shown, not on traditional media like news, TV. And so I think that's really helped, grow the women's game and grow women's sports in general. And then, I mean, from our standpoint, it feels different, I guess, but not at the same time because we've always been doing this. We just haven't had a TV camera in front of our face while we've been playing for a very long time. So I really think it's the opportunity and the access. I think that as we've gone through the last 2 years, our games are broadcast on TV for people to see, and they don't have to go digging through files on the internet trying to see us play. I think that's the biggest game changer, is like you can be flipping through the channels on your TV and we're there. So I think the opportunity and the access is the most important. And then, I mean, like, we get recognized all the time. So I remember going to Vancouver last year and we did our takeover tour game, and people on the street were like, "We're so excited that you guys are here. We're coming to see you play." And I came into Vancouver with like no expectations. They don't have a home team. Nobody was going to know who we were. And so to have that, like, as we step off the plane, I think was pretty cool.
Yeah, what was your experience with that game? It was a sellout, and I think just even across social media, that was a huge moment where externally a lot of people realized there's a lot of demand for this in Vancouver. I'm curious for you as a player, what that experience was like.
I really didn't have any like expectations coming into Vancouver. We haven't really gotten to play in Vancouver a whole bunch. The farthest west we usually get is Calgary. So getting to Vancouver, I wasn't really sure what to expect. But like I mentioned, like from the moment we got off the plane to our hotel to, walking around downtown, and then obviously at the game, seeing that it was sold out, seeing the commitment that, the BC hockey community had put into having us there was so special. I mean, I played for Toronto, and I don't think the crowd was cheering for us last year. So I'm excited to have them on my side this year. But I just think the response was amazing. And so we left Vancouver and we're like, wow, maybe this could be like an expansion spot, because they really showed up and showed out for us. So very excited, because I know that the best is yet to come.
I know I was telling you this before we started recording, but the Pacific Coliseum, absolutely great place to watch hockey. And I've never played hockey on Pacific Coliseum ice, but man, I'm sure it's a awesome place. So we're very excited to get some PWHL Vancouver games. Just as we kind of just talk about you for a second here, what's a piece of advice you'd give to your younger self? You talked about the scholarship, you talked about goal setting, that type of stuff. What's a piece of advice you'd give your younger self as a hockey player?
I think that I would just say to listen to your gut instinct. I think that that's the strongest thing that we as people, we as women especially, have, is your gut instinct. Somewhere deep down inside, like, what the proper path is for you. And so, like, there were so many times that I would look left and I would look right and I would compare, my path with somebody else's, but like, that's so not useful at all. Your path and your journey is 100% uniquely your own, and it's special in its own right. And so I would definitely say, like, trust your gut, and like, comparison is the thief of joy. So don't compare.
So this is a fun question we like asking a lot of the players we have on the show, is about how their kind of recovery process has changed over the years related to hockey, especially, compared to 10, 15 years ago. The game has grown a ton in terms of, Normatec. Some players love, for others it's the sauna or steam room, or they love the cold plunges. For you, what's your recovery process? What's your kind of go-to, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I love a sauna. I love a Normatec, a leg flush. I really think that I would say my three biggest things are water, sleep, and I use these little devices called Fireflies. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but you attach them to your legs actually, and they hook up to kind of like your nerve sensors, and it helps you recover in a
I
different way.
have
So
heard of this. I
okay,
have heard
yeah.
of these.
I got into them a few years ago for my strength conditioning coach in Toronto. Just with the travel, it really helps, and it essentially does the same thing as a Normatec, but without having to have the big boots. So I like will just be on a plane and I'll just like strap my Fireflies on. So I say Firefly, hydration, and then sleep.
Do those go just below your knee? Like that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
of, right?
Yeah, just
Okay,
below your knee.
okay.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I think I'm pretty sure it was on Shark Tank. I don't know. Maybe I'm
Could have
confused.
been. Yeah, they're
I
really
think
cool.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Another fun one just to kind of wrap up here. You could hop in a time machine. Another fun one we like to ask some people. Time machine. Okay. You get to watch any sports moment. What, it doesn't even have to be hockey. Okay. Live in person. You get to put yourself whatever seat in the house you want. Which moment are you picking?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say I would want to be in Vancouver 2010 to see the women's gold medal game. I think that would be pretty cool to see some of the like Marie-Philippe Poulin and some of the other amazing women who I played with and look up to, seeing them have that moment on home soil would be really cool.
Love it. Love it. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time today. We'll see you soon. PWHL
Thank
Vancouver.
you.
We're excited
Yep.
for the new season.
We'll be there soon. Thank you.
Awesome. There she is. Sarah Nurse. We appreciate her time. Of course. All right. That was a lot of fun. That was so much fun. I keep bringing it up, and I was trying not to be too much of a fanboy, but man, I cannot wait to watch games at Pacific Coliseum again. Like it's such a good barn, such a good barn. That'll be a fun follow up. Is have Sarah Nurse back on the show. Say, okay, what have you thought about playing at Pacific Coliseum? Because it is such a great barn.
Especially because their team on paper, if they're able to gel, and that's always the key,
like she said,
the key caveat. But on paper, they could be really good out of the gate. And that's fun, right? Especially because sometimes you could end up around professional sports. We see it all the time. Expansion team, it takes them years sometimes to get off the ground. A team like Vegas sort of ends up being an anomaly. But this is a perfect opportunity to not just you have a new team and all the buzz, but they could legitimately contend for not only playoffs, but maybe even a championship this year. So really exciting. And I imagine the home opener especially is just going to be nuts from an atmosphere perspective.
Almost already sold out. I think
Yeah.
I gotta look at getting myself some tickets. All right, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day as we wrap up here. The Seattle Kraken have not won any of the games, so I'm not. They don't even play tonight, so I don't have the option. But I'm gonna hold off on the Kraken bets because they play the Jets tomorrow. But we're going right back to the Wagon Flames. The losing streak ends tonight. They play the Montreal Canadiens, Jacob's beloved Montreal Canadiens. We're back at the Saddle Dome, the Sea of Red, whatever we call it in Calgary. Plus 100 odds, you can get Flames money line. They are the underdogs at home, but we got Wolf in net tonight. I'm assuming. I haven't looked, but I bet. Plus 100 odds, taking it. That's my bet of the day. Brought to you by Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary. Bet365. Download the app and get it on the game. Use the code NATION at Bet365. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, we will wrap it up there. For my co-host Harman Dial, our technical producer Jacob Lazar, our thanks again to Sarah Nurse for joining today's show. My name is Dave Pedrelli. Thanks so much for the episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.